So, for those of you who have not seen the video, Valve put out something in terms of their hardware, one of which, the Valve Machine, I believe is going to help indie games by a large margin, basically putting them on the console. And yeah, I know Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, they already put themselves on console, but I believe that the Valve Machine is going to do a lot better for indie games now than ever before. Now, there's a lot I want to talk about when it comes to the hardware of Valve. That whole entire presentation gave me hope for a lot of things in the future, but I want to focus on the Valve Machine, or the Gabe Cube, everybody's been lovingly calling it. I've been calling it the Steam Cube, but you know, that's neither here nor there. Nostalgia is really a kick in the ass at this point. Hi, Syncweaver here. So I've done a big poo-poo mistake with language, and I don't know English very well apparently, because I said Valve Machine, and I'm going to keep saying Valve Machine for the rest of this video, and I do apologize because the box is not a Valve Machine, it is the Steam Machine. Again, I apologize, and this is an idiot poo-poo pants signing out saying that he did something idiot poo-poo dumb. But I want to talk about the Valve Machine basically for how it can help the indie community. Now, those of you who are looking at this will probably see this and say that I am exaggerating a little bit. It's not going to really change anything if indie games are going to be on Steam or any other console. And you're probably right, but I want to see that there is something that's going to happen with the Valve Machine. Now that it's coming out as a console, or basically a console, I think there's a lot more here than what people can see. Now, I've done some research when it comes to indie games and getting themselves on the big three, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, but I don't completely have all the ideas. I am not experienced as a game developer. I'm not an indie game developer, so I don't know how it actually is. But after doing some research and after looking at how this works, I'm going to say that there may be a possibility that Steam making the Valve Machine is guaranteed to help indie games in some small fashion, or a big fashion, anything that gets them to the widescreen TV in an easier way, I think is a good thing. In this case, I want to go over what I found out when it came to indie developers and what they have to go through with going through the big three. Man, I gotta use my words right here, so I apologize if I'm not sounding in the best way when it comes to English. I don't know why, but I'm just excited. I really am. I'm excited for the Valve Machine. Guarantee that I'm going to get it, but I don't know what it's going to be in the future when it comes to this. I just don't know, but I believe it's going to help the indie crowd. It's going to help the indie community and the developers in some form or fashion. I know it will, but let's go over the big three. Now, of course, you know who the big three are. It's Xbox, it's PlayStation, and it's Nintendo. If you want to go ahead and look this up yourself, you can. It's pretty easy to find out how you can get yourself on any of the big three if you are an indie developer. But what I want to talk about is the process. Now, it's kind of like copy and paste with all three of them, honestly. They all do the same thing for the exception of PlayStation or Sony, who have a bit of a caveat to what they want from you, whereas Microsoft and Nintendo, they just want you to fill out a form, and eventually you'll get a dev kit. It may take 1 to 2 weeks for maybe a response, but what they do for you is actually quite generous, especially Xbox. They give you a dev kit. Nintendo kind of wants you to work with C++ in some sort of way. There is some things that you have to follow in terms of the rules of Nintendo, and that's to be expected. It is Nintendo. But when I was looking over this, I was surprised on how easy and cheap it was to actually get your indie game on Microsoft and Nintendo. They don't really give you much in terms of blockage or a wall. They kind of want your game to be on their systems. Even Sony, yeah, I know there is something added for Sony. If you are a game developer out there, you have to send documents, basically showing that you have your company, that you have your license, and everything like that. Of course, it's not like Microsoft and Nintendo are just letting any old game to get in their console. I mean, it is curated in some form or fashion, though some of the games that they do host is questionable. Even Sony has questionable games that somehow show up in their stores. But overall, it's not that hard to get in. The only problem is how do you show yourself when it comes to being on the Nintendo Switch, when it comes to being on the Xbox, when it comes to being on the PlayStation. How much money do you have in order to market yourself, basically? They want you to have money in order to market yourself, and that's very understandable. But there are some games that they'll actually put on, well, directs, and some games that they'll actually try to highlight. Now, I don't know what the stipulation for that is. I have no idea. I don't know the process of them marketing things for you. But from what I can tell, it shouldn't be too hard to get on the console. What's hard is to market yourself on the console. I think marketing is really all up to the developers and how they do things. If you end up on the Switch, you end up on the Switch, you end up on Microsoft's, Xbox. If that's worthwhile, sorry, it's another joke at their expense. And if you get yourself on the Sony PlayStation. Now, I don't know if it's going to be too hard, right? I know there's like $100 entry in terms of Sony PlayStation, and I know there is some money involved, not too much, maybe like $100, maybe $50 to get yourself onto the system, but developing your game, marketing it, and making sure that it actually sells, I mean, that's all up to the developer at the end of the day. It's the same thing for Steam. Now, Steam, I think, is a bit easier. I mean, you're going to showcase yourself. There is some curation when it comes to all of the consoles. Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo curates their games, I think, for the best of my ability and from what I researched. But Steam does as well, believe it or not. They do curate their games, and they only want good games to show up on their platform. Not just every game needs to show up on their platform, but there are some cases I believe that in the past there was a bit of, why is this game on this platform in the first place? I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the fact that it is pretty easy to get on Steam. Now, after you get on Steam, what do? Well, you market yourself. You make sure people see it. That's why you see so many indie developers on social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, X. They have to do this because maybe they don't have the money to market themselves in more of a commercial climate, like showing themselves up in a direct, or maybe they end up in some sort of commercial on TV or an ad of some sort. You're going to see a lot more indie developers go through content creators where they're going to pay them to do an ad for a game that they hopefully will showcase to the world. Now, there are a lot of content creators who will ask for a certain price, and there are way more content creators who are going to go for the bigger buck, which is the games that are going to shovel a lot of money, which you've seen before with games in the past on your favorite content creator. If I say World of Tanks, you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to that. That's not an indie game at all. That's from a company that has a lot of money. Indie developers do not have a lot of money. They have to broker deals. Maybe they have to get someone who can help produce the game, like Apogee. They are working with a small team. They are working with a limited amount of cash. It's not infinite. So they gotta use with what they got, Getting on Steam is not too hard. Getting on the other consoles is surprisingly not too hard. But what I think benefits all indie developers is getting on Steam. Steam has the largest gaming library in the world when it comes to PC. Now, that's an obvious, right? It's not like they're going to start showcasing Nintendo games or anything, or any exclusive game that signed up with Sony or Microsoft, of course. But we have been seeing some changes as of lately, haven't we, Ratchet and Clank, which is now on Steam? I'm not saying anything like, hey, look, even Halo is on Steam somehow. What I'm saying here is that going through Steam is probably going to be easier and probably the best route for any game developer when it comes to indie. Yes, get on Nintendo if you want to reach the children, if your game is for children. I don't know about Sony and Microsoft, but right now Nintendo is kind of winning. And when it comes to just selling games and the platform, it is Steam that is actually kind of winning, especially with the Valve machine. The Valve machine is basically a home console. It is a computer, is what they said. It's a PC, basically, for your monitor, for your TV. It's a console. It's really just a console. And now that you can have a console at home that plays Steam games, right? That means indie games will show up on the big screen easier. They don't have to go through Nintendo. They don't have to go through Sony. They don't have to go through Microsoft. The fact that they can just be on Steam, and they're coming out with a controller that works for even those that don't really have controller capabilities, right? I mean, you're going to have to make your game for a controller anyway. It's not like it's going to just configure itself, I think. I should really look into that. The Steam controller might be more superior than I actually think it is. I don't know, I'll do some research on that. The point is, now that they are on a home console and effectively a console with the largest library of games, and it's easier for people to just plug it in and play, because let's think of this, there's no cartridge that they're trying to use in order for any indie developer or developer that they have to go through when it comes to their console. Nintendo! Whew. Sorry, I had a cough there. And they're not on a console that is questionable whether or not it's going to stay popular and up to date and even relevant for years to come. Not saying anything against Microsoft or Sony. I do have a PlayStation 5 right by my foot, and I chose that console because there are games that I want to play on there, but Microsoft is not really looking too good right now. Valve made it easier for people to play their game that do not want to bother to mess with a PC. They'd rather just stick a plug in, look at it on the screen, hold up a controller, and play the damn game. And that is what they're doing. That's what a console is supposed to do. The Valve machine is doing just that. Plug it in, get your controller ready, and you can just play a game without going through the need of having an expensive, gigantic box on a desk. Your PC. It essentially is just an easier way to interface with Steam and their library. And I heard SteamOS is somewhere in there, right? I don't have all the details. I figure you guys should just go figure it out. If there's any details that I do find, I'm going to put it in the description. Well, I'm going to put in my references. I'm going to put it in the video so you guys can see what I'm talking about with their hardware and the Valve machine. I'm going to put in as much information as possible. But what I'm trying to say here, alright, what I'm trying to say is that indie games is now going to have an easier way to get on the big screen thanks to Valve. They're going to be on probably the more popular platform right now. I don't know, maybe Nintendo is still the more popular platform, but as of right now, it's going to be on a platform where it's easier to just play Steam games. More and more games from other parties are putting their games on Steam. They can show up on Sony first, they can show up on Nintendo first. Don't know if they touch Microsoft. Sorry, I'm still cracking on them, right? I apologize. But Steam is probably the most popular platform right now. I'm just gonna say it right now. It is probably the most popular platform. You don't have to have an expensive console. Hopefully, I don't know what the price is gonna be for the Valve machine. I hope it's not too big, and yet I don't think it's going to be too small. I don't know if it's going to be as expensive as the PlayStation 5. It could be $1,000. I don't know. But if you get the Valve machine, it's probably going to be worth what you paid for. I mean, if you think about it, right? If you think about it real hard, you're going to play a bunch of games that'll probably end up on Nintendo, or let's say Sony and Microsoft, not so much as Nintendo. Nintendo have their exclusives that are going to stay on their console. But you have your Crash Bandicoots that was exclusive for Sony that ended up on Steam. You have your Spyro that I honestly think was always on Steam. You have your Ratchet and Clank that was on Sony, now it's on Steam. Think about it. There are games that are coming out for Sony that's going to be on Steam. And I think Microsoft is basically giving up and they're going to put their games on Steam just as well, if not already is. Nintendo, they're just going to stay exclusive. If you want to play your Bonanza, your Mario Kart Worlds, your Metroids, your Legends of Zelda, you're going to get Nintendo. And obviously, a bunch of kids are going to get a Nintendo. They're going to get the Switch too, obviously. But if you want to get other games that are just on better hardware, let's be honest, the Switch 2 may be a stronger piece of hardware, but it's not the strongest. Obviously, it's not going to beat out the PlayStation 5. And hopefully, the Valve machine is going to be much stronger than the Switch 2. Hopefully. From what I've heard, it is, so there's no doubt about that. I shouldn't say hopefully, sorry to mislead you there. It's going to be stronger than the Switch 2, but I'm just saying. Okay, for indie games, now they have a home console somewhere in the Valve machine. And I can't wait to see how this is all going to work. I'm willing to bet that it's going to be a positive for the indie community and it's going to be a fun time for everyone. If you get a Valve machine, you're going to basically open yourself up to a large library, basically plug it in. You're just going to plug that little baby in and it's just going to show up on the screen on your TV or your monitor and you're going to have a good time. It's just that easy. You don't have to go through Nintendo's BS. You don't have to go through Sony's. Well, honestly, Sony is actually pretty good at what they do with their indie games and the games itself. I mean, PlayStation Plus, though that's pretty expensive to be honest, the membership for PlayStation. And then there's Microsoft. I don't know what's going on with Game Pass, to be honest. Just keep an eye out for the Valve Machine. Be updated all the time. And if you are a developer, please reach out to me or comment in the section below, Tell me what you feel about the Valve Machine. Is it going to help you? Will it? Will it not? And if you're a person who plays indie games, let me know. I want to see what people are thinking. I want to have a conversation, honestly. Let's see what the Valve Machine can do for us and everybody, especially in the indie community. I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.